Lorraine Hart. The managing director of YTL Group, Francis Yeoh, is our guest this week. It all began when his grandfather came to what was then Malaya from China's Fujian province in the 1920s and started a modest timber business. His father soon took over and in 1955 founded YTL, which stood for his initials. By 1978, his father handed the reins over to Francis, and he's never looked back. By 1985, he took YTL public. But the big break came in the early 90s. Fed up with the nation's constant power outages, former Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad looked to the private sector for help. YTL was awarded the first license and successfully fulfilled its obligations. The company quickly expanded from then on with investments in property, high-end hotels and resorts, a stake in the posh Eastern and Oriental Express, and the express rail link from the airport to downtown Kuala Lumpur. And now, YTL is going global. He says such investments protect YTL from becoming a hostage of Malaysia or even the region's economic growth. Today, YTL Group has a market capitalization of over $4 billion. More than half of its revenues come from outside Malaysia. I recently spent some time with Francis Yeoh at the Ritz-Carlton in Kuala Lumpur, one among several of his hotels. I began by asking him what has been the secret to YTL's success.
Success, like I say, is measured by many parameters. I don't think I'm successful yet, in the sense that success depends on standing on many shoulders. And you look at my grandfather's days or my father's days, they have very little resources. So they were doing quite well in their time. So I would say they were as successful or more successful than I. So I don't think I've reached that level, I would say, successful yet.
There's so many challenges to a family business, though. You know, many say it's a dying breed. You've got sibling rivalry in some family businesses. But YTL has not only managed to stay where it is, but it's also thrived. Why is this?
Well, this is actually, well, the secret then is actually our fear and love of God. I was the first generation to become a Christian. It was very difficult at first for my family and for the rest of my siblings. They thought I was really taking on, after 40 generations of years, I was taking them on and very confrontational. But I found that I was very consistent, and through time, I gave them all Bibles to read, and I think through the consistency of my love for them and the way I think they've all become Christians now. What's good about that is that whatever God you believe, but for me it works because once you become Christians in a family, you understand concepts that you are steward of God's wealth. So you are no longer very individualistic. You don't claim credit for everything you do because it is truthfully.
I mean, it's interesting that you decided to take on Christianity.
Yes.
Why? Was it something that came to you, or was it a slow process?
Well, I found Christ in 1971, so it's a long time ago. And because I found God so long ago, I find that he's very, very patient with me because even though I found God, I was not exactly a very godly person. But I think through time and through, like all good wines, you mature, and then you understand, you learn. And through the consistency, people start to understand that way works.
How would you, though, describe your management style? Some say it's pretty aggressive for Malaysia.
Pretty aggressive. I think compared to Donald Trump or Richard Branson, I'm a pretty grey character in Malaysia. I'm not as colorful, but yes, I'm passionate. I'm passionate. A little bit impatient sometimes because of my youth. I like to see things done yesterday. And I've learned at this right age that sometimes it just takes a little bit longer. Some things, and the patience to understand what can change and cannot change. And I know the difference now, so I'm a little bit more circumspect.
Is it true that you were groomed for YTL at the age of 7?
Well, my father took me sightseeing, yeah, seven, even earlier. I can't remember what year I was, but we've always been watching construction sites, not Disneyland, as a kid. So we were touring construction sites. So for us, we breathe concrete, steel, and all of us. It's our blood, it's part of our DNA, I suppose. But I suppose because I was the elder son, And primogeniture demands, well, it's a case of noblesse oblige. I have to make sure that I show a good example to the rest of my siblings. And they, of course, came along with me to the construction site. So we all were very marinated with all of the construction elements around us from very, very young.
So you could tell, right, whatever concrete was being used, or?
Oh, up to today, yeah, we could tell bad workmanship from a mile. We could tell what goes wrong. Can smell things. We can smell concrete. Can look at concrete and say that's too much sand or things like that. All of them can. They are all very good.
Tan Sri, what about your father's philosophy in handing over control to you at the age of 24, 25?
He is one of the best patriarchs, I would say. He started at 13, see. So my grandfather, of course, handed over to him when he was 13 years old. He was already a leader of the family. And for him, because he understood what his grandfather did, he could do the same with me. At 24, I was already 11 years older than him when he was handed the reins. So at 24, I took over, knowing that I can and I must. There is no ifs and buts about it. But one of the wisest things he has ever done was to send me to England to study engineering. There was one time we were in a recession because of the oil crisis, and we were nearly going bust. And
that's
he
the
came,
70s, right?
Yeah, 70s. He was in tears, came to my room, and he said, "Son, I probably want to tell you the truth. We're not going to make it, but I promise you we won't go bust. I will pay all the bills. I will sell everything we ever have." And I said, "Well, I'll quit and join you." He said, "That's the point. What's the point? What's the point? You could never work harder than I did. I need new thinking, new ways of thinking." And that left me indelible impression. So, of course, I'm very focused. When we came back, I wanted to change the way things are done. And instead of construction industry being a very temporal industry, you never know when your next job's coming, I invested in people and machines. And people became my assets, and that's why my brothers and sisters, I couldn't wait for them to come back. I must have them, my siblings, and they were all engineers. 5 of them are engineers. So all of these things work, and then we have extended families, all very well skilled in this area, and we changed. We went public thereafter, and the rest is history.